In today's video, I'm going to talk about a property that we've recently viewed. It's been reduced £20,000. So I'm going to run over the numbers here to see whether or not it's still a good deal or even if it is a good deal. And again, more importantly, link it across to our metrics, which might be the same as your metrics and so on. So the property is a 4-bed end terrace. It's quite a large property. It's one of the things that appealed to us was, and we'll probably get to it later on, is it had a square footage or square meterage of about 110 square meters, which wasn't including the cellar. And that's always a good sign, really. With such a good large footprint, it allows you to obviously change it or convert it to a HMO and so on easier than some of the other ones without anything majorly structural. So the property was up for 179, then it went to 169, and still now it's at 159. Okay, so altogether there's been a reduction of, please excuse my scruffy handwriting, £20,000. Now that's all relative, really, because if that £20,000 was a reduction on a £500,000 house, it's not really a big percentage. But £20,000 across a property of less than 200,000 is a reasonable amount. However, again, now that it's up for this price, we shouldn't be thinking, well, it must now automatically be a great deal, because especially in a rising market, hopefully some of you read some of the blogs I've put down as well on the property cycles and so on. In a rising market as well, it's always the agents that are going to try and push for more, as well as vendors that are selling the property. They want to try and get the best value for the property. I mean, why wouldn't you? So it's been reduced by £20,000 overall, which again is quite a good start. Now, like I said, I think it had a square meterage of, I'm going to put it down like that, I think it was about 110 square meters. So that's what appealed to us, really. Now, I'm going to talk about how much it would cost for a 4-bed on a standard AST, or how much it would bring in rent. And I'm also going to identify how much it will be on a 5-year FRI lease and so on. So that's the property at the moment. 179, then dropped to 169, then dropped to 159. It's obviously altogether been reduced by £20,000. Now, if you're a disciplined investor, and again, it's not always just about more and more knowledge, it's about implementation, and it's about understanding your why and the long goal. You could then think, right, well, if we've already been reduced £20,000, surely there's more reductions there to be had, or I could squeeze it even more. Now, this is why we always mention to Menteed as well, when you go on a viewing with an agent, it's not just to look at the property, it's also to look at, or also to gather information from the agent. Now, this property, the vendor has 2 properties on the same row and is looking to offload both of them. So you never know, he might have bought it 30, 40, 50 years ago for whatever really, really low price and now just looking to cash in. So you might then think, right, so could we get this lower? But what we are going to do is base the figures on today that we're just going to pay 159, 160 for it. So on to the next page then. From here now, if it was a 4-bed on an AST, so it's 4-bed there in our area on an AST, the property as it stands would probably rent about 1,100 PCM per calendar month. 1,100 as it stands. Now, anybody that's seen any of our videos before or anything like that know that we like to do a good detailed, pretty much back to brick refurb and so on, and really try and raise the value. So we might be able to squeeze that up to 1,200, but then again, you've got to offset and think, if I'm going to put 30,000 into it, is it really worth that extra £100 per calendar month, £1,200 over a year for that initial outlay? Probably not. Because again, 4-bed renters in our investment area aren't really as in high demand as obviously 2-bed terrace, bread and butter of our portfolio, and your 3-bed townhouses, end semis and so on. But this is where it gets interesting. That could really be 4, 8, 12, 2,000 to possibly 2,400 PCM if it was converted to a HMO. Now, again, I'm not trying to, ram HMOs down anybody's necks or anything like that, but you always need to look at the pounds, shillings, and pence. Why would I be going for a 4-bed on a normal AST at 1100 when I could convert it to a HMO for a little bit more, obviously, in the build out cost, but yet pretty much achieve double or thereabouts per calendar month? Now, that would be on a 5-year FRI lease. Okay. Now, on a side note, though, some of you may have seen a video that I've done recently on one of the properties that we inspected. It's a 2-bed terrace that we provided to a housing provider, and it's a complete mess. So again, maybe have a look at that one after this video as well. But the numbers themselves there are dramatically different, and then you need to consider, well, is it worth, let's go back to it now, paying or investing 160,000, obviously that's subject to legals and stamp duty and so on, for returns which could be upwards of that. Now, again, that's not gross profit, of course it's not. You've got to make sure that your mortgage payments are taken out of that and other bits and pieces. But when it goes on a 5-year or a lease, it should be guaranteed rent model, and that's how much you should be getting each and every month. Now, I mention that because that would be it would be 400 per room. So again, times, if it's 5, that's where we got the 2,000. Like the way my handwriting's going off here. Or again, if it's 400 times 6, that's where the £2,400 comes into it. Now, again, you should be seeing why it was important and why it caught our eye. This here, there. Okay, so 100 square 10 meters. That means that it could, let's do it this way. If we were to get 6 bedrooms, I won't use that pen obviously. If I could get 6 bedrooms there, times, let's go for minimum square footage, even though it's 6.51, let's do it at 6 times 6, is that 42? 42 square meters there we will need for that bedroom. Then let's take away 10 square meters for, I'll put it down there, bathroom. And then we're going to take approximately 20 for the kitchen / diner. Okay, can't you tell why I don't normally write on these whiteboards? So we've got 42 square meters there for hopefully the bedrooms. Then 50, then 60, then 70. So that would be 72 square meters for the essentials and so on. Now, obviously, we've then got another 30 meters or so for corridors and hall spacing, stairs and so on like that. So that then, before we even went to view the property, we knew really that it could potentially be a 6-bed HMO. This is why you always need to keep educating yourself, but more importantly, you need to be learning from somebody that's been there, done certain things, made lots of mistakes and so on. So this is where this property now could look more appealing than just that. Okay, so let's get on to one of the favorite metrics here. Again, check out the channel now. I'm not gonna massively explain it now. Return on capital employed. So you might have called that, ROI, return on investment, or cash on cash, similar things. But return on capital employed, basically, again, I will have done a blog about this, and it's definitely in my book. Return on capital employed is how much money you expect to be returned to you each month, each year, based on the amount of money you've left in that deal. So if you purchase a property for 100,000, unless you bought it all cash, what we're doing is basing the return on capital employed based on how much money you've left in that deal. Now, again, I'm not going to go into the full ins and outs of BRRR. I know I've done plenty of videos on that on this channel. Check some of those out. But it's how much actual money's left in. So if you put 25% deposit down, that's 25,000, plus then your 5,000 stamp duty, that's 30,000. So really, the actual money you've got left in that £100,000 property is about 30,000, unless you're educated and you implement a decent BRRR strategy. So let's go back to this one now. So we're going to base it on 160k. Okay, so the deposit will be 40,000. Okay, and again, that's a big chunk of change, of course it is. You've then got your stamp duty, land tax, that would be I think it's about, let's just call it 9, but I think it's about 8,700, something like that. A little tip, don't just guess your figures and so on. Maybe go on Knight Frank, their website, Knight Frank, I think it's all one word. Have a look at the stamp duty calculator on there. If you go on the direct.gov one, it asks you what seems to be a million questions, and it can just be a lot longer of a process. The refurb then, probably refurb is going to be about, let's have a look, 35. And then we've got the legals in there as well. So I think we're probably looking at about 85, 700 or thereabouts, okay? Now, again, don't quote me on you've missed this out. You've missed that out. What about holding costs? I'm bundling the holding costs in with the refurb. And again, the figures are there or thereabouts. What this essentially needs is, for it to become a 6-bed HMO, is the large front bedroom on the first floor to be split into 2. So that's created an additional bedroom, and then the first reception room downstairs that has the traditional one. As soon as you walk in the front door, there's going to be an internal wall here. So the reception room now becomes a bedroom, one of the easiest ways to add a bedroom, really. So that's where the 6 bedrooms come from. Like I said, it's 4 bedrooms at the moment. The 5th bedroom will come from downstairs, one of the reception rooms, and the 6th bedroom will come from splitting the large bedroom on the first floor up. So you've got 6 bedrooms there. Now, let's look at it this way again. So if we go down the AST route, you're probably looking at about £1,100 per calendar month. If you're going down the HMO route, let's go for, let's say, £2,000. Basing it on, we can only convert it to 5 bedrooms, okay? Because the kitchen / diner doesn't maybe meet the standard, the square footage, which I know it would do, but let's underestimate it. So from then, if we've got a mortgage of, let's have a look here, I know I'm jumping all over. If it's 160, that means the loan will be 120k, based at about 5.5%. Limited company, you're probably paying about 550 now per calendar month. Again, I know I'm jumping around with figures here and something like that, and some of you may be getting a little bit confused. There is nothing wrong with that at all. Obviously, these are there or thereabouts. But again, have a look at some of the blogs that I've produced on my website, Dervish. Have a look at some of the other videos where I go into a lot more detail on how to calculate this. So if that's our per calendar month mortgage, so minus 550, we've then pretty much got about 550 there cash flow. That's if we're self-managing, which we never do really, okay? Because we value the phone not ringing, the email not going off every 3 minutes, somebody complaining. So you've got 550 there, all right? Now, times that by 12, what have we got? We've got about 6,000, something like that. Let's have a look. 6,000, I don't know, 6,600, I think it'll be. So your return on capital employed here really will be very, very, very low. Whereas, and again, this is why it becomes more appealing, if you still had the same mortgage, minus 550, note that there would be no management agency costs, unlike there would be in this, which I haven't calculated because it would be on a lease. Then the cash flow becomes, what is that? Is that 1450? There or thereabouts. Again, please forgive my maths. Is it 1450? Yes, it is. So look at the difference there in cash flow. All right. Again, I'm going to emphasize this by it's potentially £550 per calendar month cash flow or £1,450 per calendar month cash flow. As you can see, massively different. Massively different. Now, I'm not a huge, great advocate of turn all your properties into HMOs. If you come working with me and I help you along your journey and so on, I want everyone to be a HMO. Definitely not. But this is where it turns into, you can't just look at a property and think it's going to be an AST. This one's going to be an SA. This one, I'm going to push it as a HMO. It's always got to be you doing your maths, your due diligence, and deciding clearly on your why. All right, for me, being a black belt investor and helping many other mentees, it's about that long-term approach. Yes, of course, we're teaching you property strategies and so on, all that type of stuff, but you can get all that information from YouTube and books and so on. For us, it's more about this mindset up here about how do we look at things, what's the end game, how long we're looking to do this for, and so on. So there's so much more to it than just these random figures here. But the return on capital employed if you were then to work that out, you would then divide that here, and then probably the return on capital employed, not probably, will be massively better than if you were then to do the return on capital employed there, okay? So always have a look on the return on capital employed if you want your money working for you as hard as possible. So the question is then, does a reduction in price equal a deal? That's always going to be the question, okay? Hopefully you'll have some software plugin apps or something like that which tell you when properties have been reduced, what the original prices were, what they've gone down to, and so on. But we need to be aware of this question always: is a reduction in price necessarily a deal? Not necessarily. No, it might have been overpriced to start off with. Now it's started to become a little bit more realistic. Then when you go to attend the viewing, you realise that it needs more work than you initially thought it would do. So a reduction in price does make the deal more appealing, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is a good deal or even a great deal or a fantastic deal. So when would it be a good deal? Again, the lower you lock in the lower you purchase property for, the more equity you've tied in, the more profit you've made from day one. That's got to be first step. So one of the properties that we did last year, we picked it up for 75 and it was originally up for 99. Now again, that 25,000 pound might not seem like a lot, but based on the size of the property, I think it was only 59, 60, 62 square meters, something like that. That was a significant reduction. Again, if it was a lot larger property and it was up for 300,000 and we managed to secure it at 25,000 pound less, it's not a great discount really. So what I need, or what I'd like to obviously extend across here or make you try to understand, is that the reduction in price is normally good, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is a great deal. It's about you understanding, what are my metrics? What am I willing to leave in this deal? Do I want cash flow? Do I want equity? Do I want both? Am I looking for a high touch or pretty much hands off investing? And again, that's why it's all completely down to you. Never suffer from shiny penny syndrome, okay? Somebody's doing an essay and they're making loads of money. I'm still stuck with this boring 2-bed vanilla buy to let. It depends on you and your goals and your why and so on, and what you're looking to achieve from property. If you'd like to obviously be trained properly, not just information dump, then check out the Black Belt Property Academy, check out the Black Belt Property Accelerator. That's a stepping stone onto the academy, okay? So we review applications each week. So have a look at probably the link in this video. Maybe check out the website as well, but definitely the Black Belt Property Accelerator is the first step onto the academy. And again, it's about whether or not we're both a good fit for each other and so on, okay? Because it's not just one of these where we have hundreds of people in a room, okay? This is more a lot of hands-on bespoke things to make sure that we're helping everybody move further forward. Good luck. Keep taking steps further forward. Maybe like the video if you want to. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Check out some more of the videos as well. But just to go over it again, a reduction in price doesn't necessarily mean it's a great deal. We always need to be looking at the return on capital employed. Again, looking at the main differences from an AST, assured short hold tenancy, comparing it to a HMO. And again, some of you, when we get a little bit more advanced, might be looking to do the emergency housing type of stuff. Cash flow there is always essential. And again, I'm just basically tying it up there, wasn't I? It could rent for 1,100 or 2,000 to 2,400 per calendar month, still with pretty much the same type of refurb, but you would have to, in our area, it's £1,500 for a 5-year HMO lease, which in my eyes is not bad. I'm paying £300 a year to access a lot more monthly cash flow. So yeah, that was it. 179 to 169 to 159. This is what appealed to us. And again, if you're somebody looking to invest in HMOs, I know there's loads of information out there, but you got to know, the basics. What are the minimum square meter size for each room? What are the requirements? How much is the license in my area? Is it in an Article 4 area and so on? Anyway, good luck. Keep taking steps further forward and all the best. Maybe speak to you soon. Good luck.